And our final keynote speaker will be Tim Watkins, who's Vice President of Huawei Western Europe. Tim joined Huawei in April 2009. He is based in Huawei's UK head office in Basingstoke. Tim is a key member of the European Management Board and brings some 28 years of industry experience. Tim is focused on three principal activities within the group: customer relationship building and improvement and driving greater clarity and understanding in senior level customer interactions, improving government relations across Europe and providing higher levels of transparency into Huawei strategies and European investment activities, and providing guidance and greater visibility via Huawei's public relations and press interactions. Tim joined management leadership team from Nortel, having spent 16 years in sales and marketing roles. His most recent role was leading Nortel's North European sales operations for all product lines, which included enterprise, carrier and wireless divisions. Prior to that, Tim was leading the wireless business in Europe and took personal responsibility for several of the global wireless accounts. And Tim, you've done an awful lot of work in fixed wireless and goodness knows what, voice data, you name it, you've done it. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Very good, thanks, John. Well, good afternoon, everybody. What I plan to do is, for those of you who've not heard of Huawei, and I guess there probably are a few in this audience, is to give you a little bit of background of Huawei, our vision and strategy, and really our view of where we think the industry's heading off to. Some of you might want a better view of Huawei. I would recommend you take a read of The Economist. Today's front page of The Economist features Huawei, a fairly extensive, I would say very well-balanced article, gives some very deep insight into Huawei and our global progression. But the first thing I really would like to say is that this comment made back in 1971 by Alan Kay, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And that's very much akin to Huawei's philosophy. The building you see in that picture opened last year. It's Huawei's shiny new wireless R&D center in Shanghai. There are some 12,000 engineers, all networked through Huawei's own cloud solution. It's very much part of the global 62,000 R&D empire that Huawei has built. We took on 140,000 employees over the last 27 years. 28,000 of those joined us last year alone. So pretty incredible growth. The annual revenues of Huawei are now 32 billion last year and expected to exceed some 40 billion next year. So it's a sizable business. It's very much the first global Chinese business to truly globalize. Many mainland Chinese companies are globalizing, but Huawei is really very much the first one to do so. Interestingly, it's a private company. It's not state-owned. The shareholders of the business are, in fact, the employees, the Chinese employees, I hasten to add, unfortunately. But the business is going from strength to strength, and part of what I'm going to talk to you about today is Huawei's vision of the areas of growth, and hopefully we'll be able to give you an idea. But before I do that, I'll just give you some few facts and figures. I'll just summarize here. There's a list of customers that are all quite interesting because they are customers that are using mobile infrastructure. These are typically carrier customers, which has been the principal business of Huawei up to now. And these customers are using next-generation wireless infrastructure in many different ways. There are examples here from Japan, from America, from Europe, from France, from the UK. What's interesting about these are all next-generation 4G technologies used at different spectrums. And I'll explain a little more later on why that is so important. But of all the major standards that are emerging across the world, Huawei are very much present and delivering solutions, whether it be GSM or UMTS or LTE or WiMAX, we're very much in there. And one of the revolutionary inventions that Huawei were involved in the very early days was a device called a single RAN. And for those of you who don't know what a RAN is, it's a radio access node. It's what the mobile operators use to deliver the signals to everybody in this room and around the world. The single RAN enabled 2G, 3G, 4G networks to be deployed in one single box. And it transformed the business case for the operators. Just in power alone, we were hearing just now about the importance of power saving. The power savings alone of having a single RAN rather than a garden of base stations at various sites enables the operators to effectively pay for the brand new shiny networks over a period of something like 4 to 8 years. That's just power savings alone. And many of our customers are telling us that they're saving, by using this single RAN concept, something like 40% of the power that they would normally typically use. Just a few other words of highlights here. We are actually, unbeknown to many people in the world, serving something like 45 of the world's top 50 networks or network operators. They rely on Huawei to deliver the services to their customers. Something like 38 of the 80 commercial LTE networks are supplied by Huawei now. That's nearly 50% of what is in service. We've already signed well over 80 contracts globally now for the emerging 4G contract or 4G technology. And already in the world, there are well over 200 million plus people using LTE services. So the fourth generation is very much up and running, and Huawei is very much at the heart of delivering that experience. So a few words about, I'll just catch up with myself, forgetting there were builds. This very simple chart really explains our strategy. The blue bit in the middle is really what has built Huawei's 32 billion business to date. And that really is represented by a pipe. We've been delivering the pipes that deliver both fixed and mobile internet services. And most of the world's carriers rely on Huawei to deliver that, particularly BT in the UK here, TalkTalk, to name but a few. But we believe there are markets out there that are probably 5 to 10 times greater than the markets we've been playing in up to now. If you look at the top, everybody's talking about cloud, and Huawei is now entering the business, and we have a very interesting little trial site called China. These Chinese networks, just to give you some scale of why China is so important, these operators in China, people like China Mobile, China Unicom, have networks that don't just serve 30 million customers, which is the typical average size of a European operator. These guys are using networks or serving networks of 600–700 million customers. So Huawei supplying that kind of scalability, not just in infrastructure, but now in cloud solutions, is going to be extremely relevant as the world morphs into a cloud-based world. So Huawei is building data centers. We're building our own servers. We're building our own power systems. We're building our own storage. We're building ready-to-drop-in data centers. We're developing our own cloud, private and public and broking software that we think will really change the game in cloud computing. We will clearly be going after a whole raft of very new competitors that we haven't traditionally gone after in the infrastructure space. But of course, we've heard a lot about the areas at the bottom of this chart. The mobile devices that we've heard so much about and have really delivered such a wonderful user experience is also a target for Huawei. And actually, if you see that article in The Economist, you'll see that there's quite a bit about Huawei's march into the mobile device and the smartphone business. We're also entering the connected home business in an extremely aggressive way. Already in China, very, very large numbers of homes are already networked. And we're starting to see the beginnings of a connected home at a cost base that will really revolutionize the industry. You're already probably aware of the recent UView excitement coming along. That's going to be using a Huawei set-top box. The enterprise business is probably a market 4 times larger than the carrier market for us alone. And this is a business that we're about to embark on a very significant drive into. Not just providing the traditional LANs and WANs, which we already do, but unified communications, the telepresence, and a whole raft of innovative enterprise solutions orientated around the unified communications that will, in effect, network the entire business. We're already supplying billing systems and billing platforms, integrated prepaid, postpaid billing solutions all around the world. The mobile money business that not many people have talked about today, we think is also going to be a pretty dramatic expansion. We're also very active in the M2M business. That's always been a business we've been very focused on, providing embedded chips. But Huawei will now also very much enter this, this whole raft of the Internet of Things, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Now, this is all wonderful. It rather answers the question, not one company can do everything, but Huawei is actually moving into many, many segments of this area. And whilst the watchword is simplicity, intuitive, seamless, those are the goals we want for the user experience. Let me tell you, this is not easy to do from a whole unifying of fixed mobile communications around a unified experience, especially when you incorporate this bring your own device methodology that people are going to want. This is actually non-trivial. It may be easy at the handset front end of it because that's one part of it, but the networks themselves are going to be quite a challenge. The next very, very important challenge we see is this integration and the convergence of CT and IT into ICT. And this is really very much, I guess, the area where Huawei expects to excel in the future. There's a recent prediction. I mean, many predictions have been made and shared with you today, but if we look at the left-hand chart in 2011, nearly doubling in terms of devices to 2016, that could be quite modest prediction given what we've heard today. But given the pace of change, ubiquitous access from these fixed and mobile devices seamlessly is going to be one very significant challenge for the infrastructure. As a country, I think there are many, many opportunities. We have rich resources in Britain that understand how this is going to be done, how the challenge can be undertaken. And that's in the areas of developing skills in managed services to help operators and enterprises transition from the old world to the new. Quality of service and quality of experience will be the watchword for every decision maker that takes on the challenge of wanting to move into this transformation. So a goal for Huawei is to deliver multi-tenanted IP cores for our customers with the ability to map, model the migration to mature unified communications. The idea, of course, is that businesses become communications enabled rather than just IT enabled. Now, the next hyperwave, I guess we could call it, is really going to be the projection of the not only the number of devices, but the amount of traffic that is going to pass through the networks that we all will be relying on in the future. And this change, we've already heard that there's probably a 25x build in traffic in terms of devices and traffic. But we believe that there will be something like a 500 times increase by 8 years' time, 2020. Just in signaling alone, there's going to be something in the order of 200 times growth on the signaling. Apps updating themselves, networks updating themselves with location-based information. The whole growth of this business is going to put huge strain not just on the computing resources, because computing resources really can grow and have been growing, as we've heard earlier, pretty rapidly. There's not such a constraint on the growth of compute power. There's not such a constraint on the growth of storage. Storage can just get expanded and added and built on. And the cost, incidentally, of both storage and compute power is going down, not up. Where there is a very significant bottleneck and challenge is in spectrum. And that's the area that is most prized by the operators that use it. It'll be very interesting to see what the auctions at the beginning of the next year bring in Britain, but spectrum is really the key area to enhance the spectral efficiency, to improve the way in which networks perform, is very much at the heart of what Huawei are doing. So this whole landscape is changing. Ultra broadband, we've heard all about wanting faster and faster solutions. So I'm not going to go into that whole story, but the tolerance, zero wait time is going to be demanded. People won't tolerate waiting for information. They'll move on to a service provider that can actually do it. Ubiquitous connectivity. Having set up ubiquitous connectivity, any person, any device to any device, you then have to secure it and provide the access and connectivity for only those that really deserve it. So clearly broadband everywhere is obviously, goes without saying. But this whole network architecture, it really will be the key challenge for the next 8 years. And we're developing networks that will organize themselves, self-organizing networks. This any application, any customer getting access anytime they like. So there's going to be a good few challenges into the future. Before I finish, I just wanted to share a few words. Huawei's been in the UK for some 10 years now, and I just really wanted to give you a few words about our experience in the UK. The first thing I'll say is that we've been welcomed as a Chinese company into the UK. Very future thinking of the UK government. We've been extremely impressed and very happy with the support and the development of our business here. Next year, we'll probably be approaching $1 billion, around 800 employees already in the UK. And part of the reason why we expect to develop more in Britain is the rich clusters of R&D expertise that we find here. We've already made our first acquisitions a few months ago with a company called CIP. The world-leading universities, we're already providing some sponsorship to half a dozen of the UK's top universities. And we see such rich pickings in the best brains of the world here in the UK. We're also developing a security centre here. We think security is going to be one of the most important subjects in the future. Actually, that article in The Economist goes into some detail about what we're doing, so I'll spare you that. But overall, we couldn't be more happy with the way the UK government have embraced Huawei's entry into the UK and assisted with our expansion and our additional inward investment. If we look into where we're going in the future, we're already well on the way to designing the 5th generation of networks. These networks will have to support a very different set of traffic, a different architecture. This 50 billion devices that are going to have to be supported across the network, I think, is just an underestimate. So the architecture of the next generation is going to be quite different to this generation. And the traffic flowing across it, the plethora of devices, probably unknown today, will develop further challenges. So we're going to continue to invest in Britain, we're going to create jobs, we're going to innovate here, and we're going to leverage these rich resources that Britain has to offer. Thanks very much indeed.